Hello. So for my student success plan and my presentation for my field experience, I learned a lot of things. I worked with every student in our classroom, but there were three students that I worked with the most, and those all three of those students were of different backgrounds than myself. Um, the students I worked with, they were bright and they were personable and friendly and well behaved. All of her students were very well behaved. It was a great class to work with. They didn't understand something or didn't know the answer, they were quick to ask. And each student was willing to try to learn new concepts when they didn't understand them. Um, and so I'm going to break down those three students I worked with. The first student is a great student, great grades, learns very well, performs well academically. He's very personable and likes to help others. We were playing a math game, and it was him against another student, and he was giving the other student the answers, even though it was giving the other student more points because he was trying to help the other student. He really is like the helper, I think, in the classroom. He wants everybody to be doing a great job, which I thought was really nice. Um, he does a great job reading, and if he didn't know a word, he could sound it out very easily. And he his original language is Spanish, so there was a little underlying accent when he was reading, which I thought was actually super cool. Um, Student number two is the giggliest and most upbeat student. This student struggles a little more with the academic side, but the student is super outgoing, so they have a lot of friends and loves to tell stories about his family. Every time I tried to sit down and work with him individually, I always heard a new story about something that was happening with his family. It would take a long time to get started on our work because he'd be so excited. Um, and this student did struggle with school a little bit. Math in particular, he has struggled with his short-term memory, so we go over an idea when adding, and when we would try to revert back to what we had just learned, the student had issues remembering. Um, but again, this student also, his first language was Spanish, and did a great job at sounding out words and wouldn't quit. Always would sit and sound out the word until he realized what the word was. Student number three is an interesting student. When I first met this student, I thought it was a specific gender. Come to find out that it was a different gender, which I thankfully realized before I made a mistake in front of the class or to the student. I didn't ever want to have the student be embarrassed. So I was really happy that I learned that before. And the student is very shy, but the second that they feel comfortable, they are outgoing. And um, the day that I connected the most with this student was when we were out at recess, and I played football with the student and a couple other students as well, and the student finally felt super comfortable around me, which made me feel really happy. And then the last few days of us working together, the student felt a lot more comfortable and like to have more conversation, which I thought was awesome, which just goes to show how much safety is important. If a student feels safe, then they'll really let themselves show and let their personality show. Um, some of the students still, I mean, it's the end of the year, and these students have all been together for the whole year, and they're still very confused by this student, which is actually the moment when I realized the difference in gender. And I think the best way to address that in my classrooms would be, and the teacher in this classroom continue to do a really great job of this, would be to just continue to educate the kids and just, I mean, it's a very young age for this student, and although they dressed as a different gender, would stereotypically kind of dress, they still identified as their like birth gender. Um, so just to continue to stick up for the student and be an advocate for this student, which my cooperating teacher did a really great job of. Um, yeah, my heart, I have a special place in my heart for that student just because they were so kind and so wonderful to everybody. Again, I learned many things from all of the students. I worked with all of the students in our classroom at some point, and I learned a lot of things from all of them. I noticed that the students were proud of who they were. If a student was working through a math, my student number 2, when they worked through math problems, sometimes they would switch it into Spanish just to be able to figure out what the answer was a little quicker. And so I noticed that, so I started using my 2 years of high school Spanish to say things like muy bien and things like that to the student, and that made the student so excited. They freaked out. They loved it. And so just acknowledging that there are different cultures instead of trying to pretend like there's not. It's, different cultures is not a taboo subject in my opinion, and I think we should embrace the differences of other students. In my classroom, in this classroom, I wanted to be a cheerleader for these students, which I thought was a good position for myself because I'm, someone who's just coming in for an hour every day. So why not just come in and cheer them on and let them know how great they're doing and that their efforts are not going unnoticed. And the day that I connected again with all of the students was on Fun Friday when they get to go outside for recess or do some fun activity, and this specific day was recess, so all the students were outside, so I tried to play with everybody and go to all the different, where all the different kids were doing all the different things. I tried to hang out with everybody, and it made me realize that as a teacher, there needs to be a moment like that when you connect with your students. And for me, it was on like day 7 of working with these kids. And so in my classroom, I want to make sure that that moment is day 1 or day 2 with my students, because I want them to, I noticed a change in how they acted around me afterward, and they were more comfortable, and they were more comfortable with making mistakes. And so I want to have that moment with my students as a teacher very early on, so that we can build a foundation. Each of these students that I worked with, the 3 that I mentioned, for student number 1, I would just want to continue to encourage and to challenge them in their schoolwork. This student was extremely bright and worked really well when given a challenge. For student number 2, I would want them to receive some extra help in math for sure to help with his short term. And I would want to continue to speak some little bit of Spanish every once in a while and make him feel comfortable. And then student number 3, I know that I would be more protective of that student, and I would want to make sure that they were being portrayed how they wanted to be, and how and that students were accepting and kind and understanding of that student. And as far as academically goes, this student works, again, like student number 1, really great under a challenge, and so I would want to continue to challenge the student and help them grow in their education. So those were some of the highlights and some of the things I learned during my cultural diversity field experience, and I really enjoyed it, and I'm really happy with how everything went. So thank you.